Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite tanking team in the Bay Area. And today is the big one. Will Scouch joins to profile Connor Bedard. He's the reason why you lose all those games. We're going to talk about Connor Bedard, why he is such a prize prospect, the Bedard versus Fantilli, and just more draft stuff with Scouch. So all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm your host, JD Young, contributor at Fear the Fin, RAP, and San Jose Hockey Now. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch this on YouTube as well as we cover your team every day. But we are joined by the one and only Will Scouch. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's going great. It's always wonderful to be back. Love hearing the theme music to the show every single time. It's always good to see you too. It's always fun, and you gave me the best guy of all of them, right? So I can't complain.
I had to. I mean, I always get you on to do the big preview before, and I had to give you Connor Bedard. I mean, he is the reason why the Sharks keep losing all these games, and why most teams are trying to lose as many games as possible. Before we get into Connor Bedard, if you guys don't know who Connor Bedard is a center for Regina in the WHL. He's 5'10", 185 pounds. In 51 games this year, he has 61 goals, 64 assists, 325 shots on goal. Just absolutely bonkers in his absurd numbers. And I mean, okay, let's start here because Connor Bedard has been the guy that's been talked about for the past few seasons, right? This is the guy. What makes him such a special franchise-altering prospect?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a guy where he just has such a, from my view, masterful touch for the offensive side of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything he does when he steps on the ice is pretty much focused on, I'm going to take the puck into the offensive zone or get it there, and then I'm going to make something happen. And 9 times out of 10, he does make something happen, whether, something.
Mm-hmm.
The quality, like, you don't score 60 goals in 50 games without having a pretty good shot. You also don't score 60 goals in 50 games without being willing to shoot the puck a lot,
yes,
even if you have a great shot. And the fact that he also has piled on 60 assists on top of that, I mean, we can dig into it because a lot of people sort of portray him as a little bit more of a sniper or a shooter first, but there's playmaking there with him, and when you factor in the types of line mates he's had over the course of the last couple of years,
it's not like Regina is some like powerhouse.
They're not.
Team.
Yeah, and Bedard is a major part of that, and so he's a major part of why they're not a great team. He's a major part of why they are where they are. Yes. Just like the high level production data he has is already pretty nuts on its own, but by my last count, he's sitting at, like, for every 10 goals his team is scoring, he's getting points on between 6 or 7. Like, it's just so dumb. Like, it just doesn't really make sense. I'm trying to think of the last guy.
It's just Erik Karlsson on the Sharks this year. That's the
equivalent. Like, I'm trying to think of a guy who brings that kind of, like, I don't even know. Like, I'm trying to think. I don't see any. I just pulled up my list that I made when I first started doing this work of, like, all the draft eligible guys that were drafted in the first round that had really, really high production levels in the CHL. And, like, I think the highest one I can find is, like, Sidney Crosby, who was at 56, and he's up at, like, 67. So, part of that, I think, is the lack of a supporting cast in Regina, but it doesn't matter. Like, he's still just absolutely bananas when it comes to scoring, and I think he does it through just a masterful touch of, like, when to, how to protect pucks, how to give himself some extra time to make some space for himself. He's willing to take chances from pretty much anywhere, and he does it because he has probably the best shot of a 17-year-old that we've seen. I don't remember the last guy who can shoot like Connor Bedard, especially at that size. Yeah, maybe Cole Caulfield. Yeah, Noah Gregor. Probably. Noah Gregor. Exactly. Yeah, like he's just amazing. He's just a great offensive talent, just a tremendous player. Who I think, I know this is you just asked one question, and now we've gone completely, in a different direction. But at the World Juniors, I think you saw a totally different side of him from what I remember seeing in Regina. Just adding the ability where he had the confidence to dish it along the boards to a line mate and let them make something happen, and he just sort of finds some space, gets a quick chance on net, and next thing you know, he's got whatever it was, 20 something points in 7 games.
Yeah, it's I think 23 points. 29 goals, 14 assists for 23 points in 7 games. So, I mean, that was going to be, because I don't want to say like players like this where it's like, of course, every time he touches the ice, he's the best player, and I mean, that's not going to change very much once he gets established in the NHL, right? Mm-hmm. Where he's going to be the best player most nights whenever he touches the ice. But I don't want to call it like a selfishness to his game where like he knows he has to be the guy. So maybe you see him taking chances and doing stuff that you wouldn't see. But your World Juniors experience is like, okay, he's doing that because literally he has nobody else to play with on Regina. Are you worried about like a selfishness, I guess, when it comes to going forward?
I think that that's going to be the adjustment for him. Like, I think he's a player who it's kind of hard to explain because a lot of people ask me like, who does Connor Bedard remind you of? But he's kind of the level of talent where it's like he kind of just is himself. Like just the way he plays is kind of one in a million. And I think that I would really hesitate to use the word selfish,
but like very, I don't. But it's very.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I think it is very, very clear that with Regina, John Paddock, the coach GM, is just telling him like, look, you're Connor Bedard, do whatever you want. And I think that in the World Juniors, you definitely saw a more willingness to be sort of a part of a machine rather than like the whole machine. But I still think in the World Juniors, like I kind of set aside the games against Germany and Austria. Those two teams are just not competitive at that tournament. Like that was
go Philip Pistacchi.
Yeah, basically, and he did. I think he scored 7 goals or 7 points in both games. Like it's so silly. But I don't want to like nitpick like games and be all technical and stuff. But I do think when games really mattered at the World Juniors, those are the ones with Bedard where I really, really paid attention. I believe he was held off the score sheet in the gold medal game, if I'm not mistaken, or the semifinal, one of the final games of the tournament. And I really wanted to pay attention to why. And I think that you do see still a player who really tries to do as much as he possibly can on his own. And the things that I see, when I track all my data and everything, the things that are very insanely clear to me is that he shoots the puck a lot from everywhere. And that's really all he does a lot of the time. Like his pass attempts are really low, but a lot of those pass attempts are when he's in the offensive zone and he's trying to shovel them to the front of the net. Like that's just kind of how it goes. And that's fine, right? Like I don't mind that, but it doesn't work out a whole lot of times. He's just kind of doing it because he doesn't see a shooting option. And I do think that there will be an adjustment because it's sort of like, look, we can't have you, at 5'10", circling around the perimeter, and then just turning and firing it from the blue line. Like you're going to need to learn, like there's in the NHL, like a lot of times it's not one singular guy carrying it around the perimeter of the ice and just rifling it on net and someone cleans up the garbage or the goalie can't save it. It's just not, the level of hockey is way too high. And so to me, I sit here and go, people are saying, oh, Connor Bedard's going to score like 100 points next year in the NHL. I don't think so, but I do think that he will. Like, I think he'll get there, right? The shot itself is there. He's got the playmaking ability. He's got the touch and the way to build the map of the ice in the offensive zone, especially. The thing I think for him to work on will just come with experience. It's a matter of like learning when not to overhandle the puck, knowing when to pass it off to a teammate in a cycle situation, knowing how to, instead of thinking shot, thinking, okay, how am I going to give myself the best chance to score as a unit, right? Like he's a guy who can step across the blue line, make a cut inside just outside the faceoff circles and rifle it top shelf in the WHL. Not too many guys in the NHL do that. And I think the last really high level scorer that I can remember that in the NHL scored a lot from further out on average than most forwards is Patrick Laine. Like he was a guy that I remember when he was draft eligible and watching him and going, this guy's just rushing the puck up the ice, stepping across the blue line and rifling it at the goalies, and they just can't stop it. And in the NHL, like it worked for a while, but he did need to sort of diversify things a little bit. He was really power play heavy. But I think with Connor Bedard, like that's literally the only sort of critique I can level, right? Like the rest of it, it's just, at least, especially offensively. Like again, I keep saying the word offensive because that's where he plays his best hockey by far. If he's got the puck, he's just a magician, right? Like the numbers that he puts up for me in the work I've done is just, it's pinned at like the best I've ever seen. And there's just very specific areas where I'm going, yeah, you might need to tweak this, or like if I'm a coach, I could see how this could become problematic. Like, I think in the gold medal or the semifinal game of the World Juniors, like he was overhandling it at the blue line, like really circling around, coughed it up, and I think it led to a goal against. And you just don't want to be doing that in the NHL, really at all. So it's going to be a matter of experience. But I certainly I don't know if I'm going to be in the camp of like he's going to jump on an NHL team like the Sharks and like literally day one he's going to be a 100-point NHL scorer. That's just so rare and I think hard to do nowadays. But could he get there one day? Yeah, sure, absolutely. He's got the offensive tools to do it. He just does so many things offensively so well.
All right. Before we continue, kind of talk about more Bedard, kind of what to expect, a realistic expectation for him in his first season. Talk about Bedard versus Fantilli and why you guys are trying to galaxy brain the crap out of this. Do want to take a quick break, talk to you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. So we are past the halfway point of the NBA season, and now it's a perfect time to download the FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores, threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so Bedard, we know he's great. We've heard the next McDavid, all that fun stuff. Realistically, for Bedard, he's going to be playing in the NHL next year, right? There's no way he goes back to juniors. He's way too good to be playing in juniors. Like he would have nothing to prove there. It's, can I score 100 goals in a season? I guess would be what he'd be trying to do, type of thing. But eventually, I know he's 5'10". I know a little bit slighter compared to some other guys, but he's going to probably start as a winger, then eventually transition to center, you think, as he grows into his body and kind of matures?
That's the tricky bit, I think. I don't know. I mean, I think it would depend on who you ask and like what you're looking for out of your centers. For me, like I don't know. I look at a center to me as a guy who's a 200-foot dude, links your defensemen to your wingers. Your wingers are so the guys that fly the zone. They chase a little more offensively. The centers kind of are that transition threat moving up and down the ice, good back checker, good forechecker, whatever it is you want to put out there, just an all-around dependable guy who can link all the guys defensively and offensively together. With Bedard, I haven't seen a ton of evidence directly that he plays a center's game where I'm really hopeful that like he's going to be a super high-end NHL center, right? Like the only NHL player that, from what I can remember seeing, again, I'm really taking it back and I'm dating myself maybe a little bit here, but like he kind of reminds me a little bit of like if Patrick Kane could, was a bit more of a shooter. And I don't like, because the defensive numbers for Bedard, yes, he's not on the best team in the WHL, but he's still not super engaged defensively. He throws his weight around. He's a more physical player than you would expect. He's more of a chippy player than you would expect. He doesn't, this isn't a guy who like backs down from heavy pressure. He's not afraid. I will never ever call Connor Bedard like shy or afraid to like get in there. He does that. Gotcha. I think he tickled a Swiss guy's chin in the World Juniors because like he is Connor Bedard, right? And so that's fine. Like I don't mind that, but like actual tangible defensive play, I think is still a pretty big work in progress. Like he's much more of a hang out at the blue line a little bit more, a little bit shallower in his own end, and then when the puck sort of comes to him from a guy like Stanislav Svozil or whoever, he can sort of just take off. And I mean, that's what his job is, right?
Yeah.
It's get Connor the puck in the defensive end, follow him into the offensive end, and just whatever happens, just try to clean up whatever he's doing.
Keep up, right?
Keep up and finish for him, like whatever. Just let him cook.
So if you're a team that in Teal and San Jose and you lucky enough to draft him, a Eklund, Hurdle, Bedard line to start things off.
That might be fun. It might be fun.
Wouldn't be a bad way to start this career, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think with Bedard, I would, he's Connor Bedard. I think if I'm coaching him, I go to him and say, look, you're going straight to the NHL. We think you want to play center. Like I would ask him, like, do you want to play center in the NHL, like right away? And if he tosses it back to me, I would be like, I think he's good enough to do it. I think he can skate well enough. He's got enough skill to problem solve in the defensive end. He's off like a shot, getting up the ice pretty well, and does a lot of things really, really well. And I would say, let's give it a shot, right? Especially if you're San Jose. Like, I don't know, you would know better than me, but the San Jose Sharks expectations next year, probably not super high. So at least you can go out there and go, like, I don't want to start off one of this super highly talented players. Who's been playing center his entire junior career. I don't want to start his NHL career off being like, gee, shucks, I don't think you can play center in the NHL. I just don't think you can hang. And especially, I think he personally would be kind of like offended by that a little. And I mean, if I'm Connor Bedard and I'm coming off of a season like this playing center, I probably would be too. And I go, look, you probably will have some lessons to learn, but we want you to experience that on your own and like experience that, and we'll deal with it as it comes. And if you hit the ground running and you score 6 points in your first game and like you're incredible, then great, no problem. But at least we don't have to be like, oh crap, sorry for making you play wing when we thought you were a center. I still think though, like when you watch how he plays now, yes, I could see him being a center in the NHL, but there are a lot of times where I'm sort of going, yeah, this guy, he's punching below his weight class. In the World Juniors, they could have had every opportunity to put him at center. They put him on the wing. I thought he looked fantastic there. Personally, I mean, it's hard not to when you do that, but you do what he did. But I don't know. I think either way, you're going to get a fantastic player. Like, again, I look at Patrick Kane and I go, yeah, that's a guy who's not known for his defensive play, but who cares? He scores 100 points a season, right? Like if Patrick Kane's exactly, defense is for nerds. So you kind of give and take with players like Kane. And I think with Bedard, I think there's a bit more in the tank with regards to shooting talent than a guy like Patrick Kane, who also is a gifted goal scorer. But you still see sort of similarities on their overall impact on the game, and that's pretty indicated in the data I've got. But once the puck hits his stick, it's dumb. It's just so silly.
So what's a realistic? I mean, you said he's not going to be a 100-point scorer, and that's unrealistic, right? Just to come out and be a 100-point scorer. But for example, say if he's playing with a guy like Eklund, or he's playing with a guy like Hurdle, or what is a realistic kind of season for him? You think like a 25-goal campaign as a rookie? Is that a realistic option for him, or like kind of outcome? I mean, you could see. You could tell me anything, right? Because you could say oh, he's a 15-goal scorer or like a 10-goal scorer, and I think you'd be a little disappointed. Or you could say, oh, he hit the ground running, hit like 30, 35 goals, and you could also see that world too, right?
It will be very interesting. I mean, you'd be dumb not to put him on your power play. You just would be if you're San Jose.
Come on, Kevin LeBay can't even crack the Sharks power play right now.
Yeah,
come on.
No, you're if you're Connor Bedard and you don't if you have Connor Bedard and he's not playing on your NHL power play next year, just to get experience, right? Just give him the puck, learn how to shoot in the NHL, right? Like that to me is already sort of a formula for goal scoring on its own, right? And I think with Bedard, it will be very interesting to see how his shooting tendencies shift. If he stays sort of the same, like right now, half of the shots I've tracked of him are from the perimeter. Like he just and he shoots more from that range than most defensemen I track. Like it's just insane. And so he is shooting from everywhere. And there is not, I don't know. I don't think this is, I can't say this with certainty, but I don't think there's a single high level goal scoring forward in the NHL who scores, say, 40 goals a season where half of their shots are coming from the boards or the goal line or whatever. Like the number of times I've seen Connor Bedard go end to end from his own end into the offensive zone and take a shot from the goal line, it's more than two hands in the games I've seen him. He just does that all the time. And it's not like NHL goaltenders will probably figure that out really soon and
Yes.
figure out that they just stay tight to the post. They're bigger than WHL goaltenders. They're quicker. They're smarter.
Yes.
They're gonna figure him out. So if I'm coaching him, if I'm David Quinn, I'm going, look, we need you to learn how to be part of a unit, and we need you to learn how to find some space on your own so that you can be teed up for shots, which he does do in the WHL sometimes, but he just has the puck so much.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like critique him. I'm saying I'm more interested in seeing what will happen. I think it will be very curious because on one hand, I think if he just goes through training camp, plays a few preseason games and goes, oh, right, I got to play like this.
Yeah.
Like he did at the World Juniors, he kind of flipped a little switch with the playmaking and the puck movement a little bit, and he really rounded things out there and alleviated some of the concerns I had going into the tournament. But if he goes into preseason and like sorts all that out and goes, okay, I've learned, I know that I'll need to ramp this up. Could he be a 40 goal scorer next year? Sure. Like Austin Matthews had 40 goals and 30 assists as a rookie. Could Connor Bedard sort of set that as a benchmark? Score 40 goals, go out there, we're going to put you on the power play, we're going to do this. It's possible.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to need to be some tweaks in his game a little bit. Like I remember watching Austin Matthews with Zurich, and he was a guy who was attacking the net. He was attacking the front of the net. He was shooting from mid-range a lot more than the perimeter. Bigger, I would say a more projectable puck protector. But I still think that with a guy like Connor Bedard, I would say like 30 is reasonable. Like I like especially if he's on your power play, like
yeah,
he's got such a good shot that if you just get him the puck, he's gonna score at some point. But it's just a matter of like habits and hockey sense, I guess you could call it, that I think are gonna that could fluctuate those things pretty significantly.
All right. Before we get out of here, a couple more questions. So the Sharks, they drafted some smaller forwards, right? Eklund, not the biggest guy. Bordelot, not the biggest guy. Beasted looks like he's going to be a pretty good size. He's pretty good size, but there's a lot of Sharks fans who say if the Sharks get the first overall pick, one, they should trade back to whoever's number 2 to gather more assets and just pick Adam Fantilli. Don't galaxy brain this, right? Adam Fantilli is going to be great, right? Scouch, but like Connor Bedard, there's a reason why this guy's a generational talent. Don't galaxy brain this just because he's a little bit smaller, right?
So on what? Yes, but I will be like, let me just lay out the case, right? Like I've seen a lot of both of these guys, and there was a time at the beginning of the year where I sort of went, I could see these guys more on an equal playing field. And I do think in 10 years, there is a chance that we look back on this and it could be like an internet argument where you have one side of fans, it would be, to me, it's kind of like you could look back on it and be like the same kind of thing as how people debate like Gretzky versus Lemieux, right? Like there are things that Lemieux did, especially in the time that he played and where he was scoring, where you're like, it's more impressive than what Wayne Gretzky was doing. But then you sort of go back and go, but yeah, Wayne Gretzky was Wayne Gretzky.
Wayne Gretzky. He's a great
like,
one for a reason, right?
Yeah, but like I could see Adam Fantilli, like the growth I've seen in Adam Fantilli's game has been huge this year. I think he has gotten a lot more confident with his size, throwing his weight around a lot more, getting involved a little bit more physically, doing that at both ends. He's gotten a lot better breaking pucks out of his own end. He's a guy who passes the puck around and uses line mates a lot more than Connor Bedard does.
Again, Michigan, a little bit better.
Yes. Yeah. Michigan's a little bit better. Yes. But I think with him, you also, yes, you can just say bigger, and that's something some people lean on, but Fantilli's size probably will benefit him in the NHL, especially when you consider how fast he is, how skilled he is. Like, it's funny. I was doing this. I sometimes do this exercise. Maybe you do it too. But like there are certain players from when I was growing up that everyone says were great, and I didn't really ever watch a whole lot of them. And one of those guys is Mike Modano, who was never like a 100-point guy, but he was a point per game dude in Dallas, and he was the captain, and the fans loved him, and he was this fantastic American player. With Fantilli, I see a lot of similar traits in his game to Mike Modano, where it's just speed, skill, insanely good shooter. Like really just a great all-around hockey player he's big, but he also can really move. And with Bedard, he's just not that.
Yeah.
And, you might see Bedard score 120 points and 70 goals one season when he's like career peak. and Adam Fantilli might never break 90, but I think that it depends on what you call a good hockey player, right? Like
Yeah.
is a good hockey player someone who is just all over the ice every single area of the game and just giving it 120%
Mhm.
and whatever? Like maybe some people might be swayed with Adam Fantilli, but if you just want zoom zoom kaboom, like straight up the ice, insane shot, get your bums out of seats,
Yeah.
sell tickets, Connor Bedard's your guy. And honestly, like, I think another thing to keep in mind is that Fantilli is, I think, 11 months older or 10 months older than Connor Bedard. Like, Bedard's a July birthday, I think.
He could almost be in the next draft.
Yeah,
Like,
so he's relatively close to next year's draft, and that
yeah.
would just be so dumb. But I think that that's also another factor that just tips it. But for me, like, just on my personal list, like, Bedard's a solid one. It would be insane for him to not go number one for me. But Fantilli's a close-ish too. Like, like on his own tier, but
Yeah.
he's on his own, I think. And I think Michkov really pushes him, but I think as an all-around NHL guy who's going to just be great at a lot of things, I think Fantilli is right there. And I think there are things where Bedard maybe at some point shores it up, gets a little bit better, or he moves to the wing and those concerns are maybe a little more alleviated. And he's got some great center playing with him who they can sort of tag team and destroy the whole league offensively. Then, yeah, sure. Then the equation changes. But with Fantilli, it's, he's not going for, I don't think he's going first overall. I'd be stunned. And just because he's bigger doesn't mean he should go first overall. But I do think that it is maybe a little bit closer than people think when you think about NHL value, especially when you talk to people who might think a certain way about the game that might devalue Bedard a little bit and value a guy like Fantilli a little bit more. But that's a mighty gap to close when you have one sort of automatic offensive guy versus sort of a good offensive guy that has a lot of traits all around the ice that really benefit him.
All right, we'll get you out of here. A couple more. So you mentioned Michkov. The Sharks probably going to be drafting the top four. You have Michkov and Carlsson. So where are you now that kind of the SHL season's over, the KHL season's kind of as I know they're in the playoffs. Where are you on these two guys? How do you have them ranked?
I've been on a roller coaster ride with Michkov all year.
So if I ask you to tomorrow, it could be a different story.
No, not anymore. But I started the year coming into the season. I kind of came in going, well, I've seen him play in the junior league last year, and he's a really good scorer. But like, this is coming from me, who's like a data guy. Like, he's a good scorer, but like, there's other stuff where I'm kind of going, yeah, I don't know. And when I watched him in the Russian second division this year with St. Petersburg, I thought he was awful. He was playing selfishly. He was really trying to do way too much on his own. He's not Connor Bedard, but he was trying to be Connor Bedard. Really not using line mates very effectively. Awful back checker, awful defensive presence. Just not really he didn't really seem to have his head in the game. It's like he didn't really seem to care that much. Mm-hmm. And I don't like throwing that around, but it was really apparent that he was like, there were other guys in Russia that I was tracking that were in a lot of ways just as impressive. Mm-hmm. And when he got loaned to Sochi, I don't know what happened. I don't know if the coach sat him down and was like, this is what we expect out of you. You're in the big time now. We're going to play you minutes, but if you don't do what we need you to do, we're not going to play you. We don't care that you're Matvei Michkov. Like, Sochi's a team with a lot of young players on it, and they brought him in to be the guy. I think they won 22 games this season, and before he came along, they had won 7. And they finished with like 14 wins in the last 40 games of the year or something like that, which doesn't sound huge, but like, they were like 7 and like 40 at the beginning when they first got him. So it was bad. And he just, like a light switch, was instantly one of the most impressive players in this draft. Like, I had him down more towards like 10 to 15 on my list at a certain point this year. And then after watching him with Sochi, I had to watch like almost every game he played, it feels like, just to be sure that I was seeing such a mirror universe version of him. Like,
this isn't real. Somebody photoshopped.
Yeah, like he was using his speed way more. He was attacking guys a lot harder, especially in his own end. He was quarterbacking breakouts through his passing pretty much a lot more than just getting carries and trying to skate into 1-on-5s and making plays below the goal line and just all these things where you're sort of going, yeah, this is more like it. Like he's playing like a hockey player, not a 17-year-old who thinks he's better than everyone and can just dance around everyone and shoot. Like it's I think it's a really important lesson to learn, but he seemed to have gotten there immediately. It was bizarre. So
really quick, so I do have a question. So we know
Yeah.
he's going to be stuck in Russia for a while. Is he going to be continued to loan to, like, what's his future there? Is he going to be with Sochi? Like, because that's my one concern is, like, if he's not in this environment, does he go back to being the guy who doesn't care? Not, you know, not, quote unquote, doesn't care. Like, that's my one little concern about this is, like, he was in a perfect environment that let him kind of, whether it's the coach or the staff or whatever, you know.
The weird thing is that
or who knows for the KHL, right?
Yeah, the weird thing was that he was loaned out again to another team in the junior league for the playoffs, not St. Petersburg's junior team. So I'm not sure what the story is there, but I would bet that he's going to play for St. Petersburg in the KHL next year. I don't see why he wouldn't, unless they just I don't know. I don't see why he wouldn't. When it comes to Russian players, I know I've spoken to a few people and they all seem to think that we might be surprised at how some teams just sort of look at the Russia situation and everything. Personally, I think, number one, money talks, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that, you know, having a US based team or Canada based team with a much stronger economic situation is pretty persuasive at a certain point, right? Maybe not when he's 18, maybe not when he's 20. But the only Russian player I can think of that held out from coming over was Kirill Kaprizov. But that's one. That's one out of a sea of them. Like, I remember people saying Vasily Podkolzin isn't going to come over for a number of years, so what's the deal with that? And he ended up, he's here. So with Michkov,
you think he might be back early? Because it's 3 years, I think, is how long his contract.
Yeah, his contract goes to 26.
But you think they might be able to buy him out, or?
Well, you know, money talks, right?
Money
like
talks.
You never know, and if it depends on who drafts him. I would be interested to see where he goes. I have no idea. I can't really pinpoint it. I think he is a bit of a wild card, but I mean, for me, most of the teams at the bottom end of the standings, like looking at them now, Columbus, San Jose, Chicago, Anaheim, maybe Montreal might want to start getting a little better sooner.
Yeah,
but Arizona, Philadelphia, Vancouver, like all of these teams are teams where, in all reality, like
they're going to be better for the next few years.
They shouldn't be in a rush to get better. They need more assets. They need more youth. They need to keep going, or there's no expectations, right? And Michkov, even if he's gone until if he's in Russia for 3 more seasons, it's just more time for him to play at a really high level. So, I mean, I hope he doesn't sort of go back to the old version of player he was if he does go back to St. Petersburg next year. I don't think he will. I'd be very surprised, because it was very much night and day, and he clearly played very, very well in Sochi. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with him. If I were running a scouting board, I would just, I think a lot of it is about relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't treat him any differently, right? Like, he's not fighting in Ukraine right now, right? Like, he's just a hockey player, and so my approach
happens to live in Russia,
right. And so my approach would my only legitimate concern would be that the Russian government, who basically owns half the KHL teams in some way, right? Like, they're all oligarch owned, and all the oligarchs work for the government, basically. So in my mind, the only concern would be Russian oligarchs or whoever runs St. Petersburg and the Russian government going, we will literally print money until Matvei Michkov, because he's our guy in Russia. Like, we will print money for him to stay here. We'll print as many rubles as we want if it means he does not leave to go to North America. But I also think the NHL is not the KHL, and the NHL is a better league.
Yeah.
And maybe there's an argument where he just personally needs time to get used to the idea of leaving the country. Fine. But I think at the end of the day, when you write him a check for $3 million for his signing bonuses and his salary in the NHL, and then he comes over at 21, he has 2 or 3 really strong seasons, and you got a contract extension for, at that point, $15 million if he's really good, $13 million if he really is this sort of high level goal scoring guy. I don't think that's the end of the world for Matvei Michkov, right? $10 million US can buy a lot of rubles.
Yes.
And so I don't know if that's going to be a massive concern for him personally. And I think that if a team sort of is hesitant about it, that's probably not the right way to go. Like, I still think he's the 3rd best player in the draft. So if Chicago gets him, if Chicago gets him, I'm going, look, you want to stay in Russia? Fine. but
we're gonna be bad for the next.
Yeah,
few
we're
years
gonna be
anyway.
bad anyway. But
Yeah.
but don't forget that we drafted you and we want you here, and
Yeah.
we're gonna make it happen. Because once you're ready, like we think you're gonna be a tremendous player, and our fans are great. Like there's all kinds of things that you could probably sell them on, especially in a team like Chicago. You know, you're an original six team. You know,
Yep.
and the fans when Chicago is good are phenomenal. So who knows? It's going to be very interesting to see where he goes. Like, could he go 10th overall because teams are scared? Sure, but at that point in the draft, there's literally no argument to like say no to him, even if he does stay in Russia for a few more years.
So you answer my question is the Carlsson versus Michkovs, because it at the beginning it seemed like it was Carlsson, but not that Carlsson had a bad season. He had a great season in SHL, but you just see that elite talent from Michkov. So all right, where does Connor Bedard go? He goes number one.
He's going number one. Yeah,
he's going number one.
Yeah.
Who? I'm going to give you the option. You say you go full Stern. You get to rig the lottery.
Ooh.
Who would you rig the lottery for? Like a realistic option. Who would you rig the lottery for?
I am probably going to get banned from this show with my answer,
fine.
but I am on the Anaheim Ducks wagon for him. Look. Let me explain.
I don't want to have to watch Zegras, McTavish, and Bedard for the next 15 years. Will, why would you do this to me?
JD, you asked me the question. I am the one who gets to answer the question, and you don't like my answer, but it's true.
I'm cutting all this out.
You wouldn't like it. You wouldn't like it, but the whole hockey universe would love Trevor Zegras playing with Connor Bedard. It would be so annoying and awful, but it would be great. I mean, I grew up in the Korea Solani years. It made the Anaheim Ducks a thing. It made them this massive hockey culture thing, and it was awesome. The San Jose Sharks with Adam Fantilli, I would argue, is probably a better fit. Like, I think it would be, and look, you're shaking your head, but you would love Adam Fantilli.
Love Adam
and
Fantilli.
David Quinn. We make judgments about David Quinn and his lineup choices and like how he wants to play. Adam Fantilli and David Quinn could be roommates. Like, I feel like David Quinn would absolutely adore Adam Fantilli and be like, I am going to play this guy. Like, I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head, but San Jose's center depth.
It's our Hurdle, Couture, and then a lot of question marks. So
right. So Fantilli slots in right there immediately and no questions asked. And I feel like that wouldn't be so bad. And man, if San Jose had one and Anaheim had the other for the next 10 years, it would be wild. I know you want Bedard, but holy crap. I don't know. I have to be honest. I can't go against my gut, you know?
No,
I'm sorry.
It's fine, Will. We'll have you will get a sternly worded email from my representation after this, but it's fine. So 5 years from now, I'm still doing this podcast because they can't replace me because they can't find anybody better for some reason.
Right.
You're on to talk about this draft. Who, other than Connor Bedard, is the best player in the 2023 NHL draft?
Oh boy. I think I throw Fantilli in there. I think in terms of what I consider to be a good hockey player, I think there will be players in this year's draft who are a ton of fun to watch. Andrew Crystal, Will Smith, Oliver Moore, Matvei Michkov, some other guys. Leo Carlsson. I mean, he's not really fun to watch, but he'll be good. He'll be a good player, fun to watch in a way. But there are some other guys that are just like a ton of fun to watch. There are guys that do some certain things extremely well. There are some guys that I think have a ton of potential that they just haven't realized yet. Like Daniel Boot in Russia is a guy 6'5", but insanely skilled, insanely good shooter. And if things work out for him, I could see him being really, really good. But I'd say Fantilli. I don't know. I in terms of an all-around guy, he can shoot, he can pass, he can hit, he can skate. He's big. He can, he's gotten a lot better this season over the course of the year. Like I think that he is probably the next best thing.
Again, you shoot for the Bedards, even if you miss, you land among the Fantillis.
That's the thing about this year's draft. Is everybody's freaking out about Bedard, but I think you've got a really strong group of like 10 guys who I think are all really good options.
Yes. No, I know. I just
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's gonna be okay, Sharks fans. It's gonna be okay.
You lose a lot of games. You're still getting something really nice, no matter what. You're getting something really nice. So, all right, Will, where can the people find you?
Yes, so you can follow me at Scouching on Twitter, or you can go to my website, scouching.ca. There's a Patreon campaign that supports it as well. You can also find me on YouTube at Scouching. My work is also hosted on McKeensHockey.com. Actually, I think that's it. I think I've gotten the plugs nailed down. And there's a live show we do every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so don't miss those. And yeah, I think that's it.
And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Listen wherever you get podcasts. Watch on YouTube as well. Will, thank you very much. Even though you've broken every Sharks fan's heart, like that's just salt in the wound, buddy. You might as well just send him to Vegas at that point. Like, so.
Oh, that I wouldn't want that. No, I'm
gross.
vetoing that.
Those yellow helmets on Bedard, those gold helmets on Bedard would be the worst. Anyway.
Yeah.
Until tomorrow, bye, friends.